What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pick and Fights Rundown, Roundup, whatever you want to call it. You know what? Those guys over at the UFC stole our idea for the name of our show, the Roundup, a couple weeks ago, but guess what? That's not going to deter us. What will deter us a little bit might be our results from this past weekend. As you've noticed, I'm wearing all black. It's not because it's like a funeral or anything, but it sure felt like that for me. I got to watch some of my favorite fighters go down in embarrassing fashion for some of them, but what are you going to do? Tom, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. It was a great card. I went 4-3, picked 4 out of 7. I think 4 out of 7 sounds better than 4-3, actually. I picked 4 out of 7 right. So not a great week, a down week by our standards, but, that being said, got to appreciate the good times, and I'm ready to get back on another heater with our video coming up later this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep tailing us if you're at home, and keep liking the videos. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. And, keep tuning in because we will come back from this subpar week. It just wasn't our best, and I think that we've set such a high standard around here that a week like this, I personally had 3 picks go my way. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel normal. But what are you going to do? So, great event overall. A lot of fun, very entertaining. I had a good time watching the fights, and maybe if I didn't have anything staked on it, between my wallet and my reputation here over at Picking Fights, I would have felt a lot better watching them. Like, wow, this is exciting, instead of, shit, I'm losing money right now. But with that being said, we'll jump into our locks. I went 1-1 on my locks this week. I had Joanne Calderwood. Lauren Murphy, she is getting so much better every single fight. And, yeah, I mean, Joanne Calderwood looked like the more technically sound fighter. The numbers on paper really led me to believe that Joanne Calderwood was going to be better, plus the strength of her opponents. But Lauren Murphy is really showing that she deserves a title shot against Valentina. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, it's a good fight, man. I mean, Lauren Murphy, like you said, just came out and showed us that, even though her wins, she's on a 1, 2, 3, 4, is now a 5-fight win streak for her. Even though her wins may not be over the most notable names, it showed us that she deserves those wins, and good for her. She got outlanded by Joanne Calderwood, 123-80. So maybe there is something to be said, about the reasoning behind why you picked Joanne Calderwood. It was a split decision, so and I think there is definitely a good case to be made that maybe Joanne Calderwood should have won that fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I said she was going to get it done with her striking, and clearly she did. It's just Lauren Murphy. We've spoken about this before. Women's fights get judged differently than men's fights, and Lauren Murphy had a lot of control time on the ground, a lot of takedowns, so that definitely affected the outcome. But when I heard split decision, it didn't make me feel good at all, because if it was like, okay, Lauren Murphy won this outright, there was no debate about it whatsoever, it would have, okay, that's fine, I can live with that. But I can never live with a split decision. It's just
going to be close.
Yeah, it's like you're.
I'm that close to getting it right.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And then with my other one, I had Eric Anders. He pulled through for me, fortunately. That was a good fight.
Than it should have been.
Yeah, definitely.
Or at least I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, definitely way closer. My memory of some of these fights is a little bit hazy. I was at a lake house with a bunch of my friends from college for the weekend. So, I wasn't paying full attention. Also, you know how it goes when you're out at those lake houses, right? So Eric Anders, from what I remember, yeah, very close fight, but he pulled through and he got it done, just like I said he would. And then you had Chase Hooper for your lock, for your prelim lock.
Yeah, absolutely. And, listen, Chase Hooper, I potentially was a little bit too high on him. He did come in there and at times show pretty good striking, like definitely improving in that area. But, listen, Steven Peterson came in he weighed in 3 pounds heavier. He was probably a lot heavier in there. So, Chase Hooper at this point, he seemed to have good jiu-jitsu technique, and that's really not where his weakness was going to be. But he was just getting out-muscled in this fight by Steven Peterson. And, maybe that has something to do with missing weight. Maybe Chase Hooper needs, excuse me, maybe Chase Hooper needs to just put on more weight and maybe go up a weight class, or have more of a weight cut. But from a talent and a skill set and a technique perspective, he did look very good in this fight. He just got out muscled.
Yeah.
I'm nervous for him because now this is 2 losses and he's 2-2 in the UFC. He is only 22 years old. I'm wondering if, and a lot of people are talking about it, him going maybe down to a lesser promotion where there's not as stark a contrast in competition. It might be better for him. I mean, look at Brandon Moreno. He was first off of Tough his season on The Ultimate Fighter. He then was cut from the UFC and then was a champion, and I think it was LFA, and then came back and, 2-3 fights later, he's a UFC champion. So, maybe it could be good for him going down and maybe coming back around 25 to 26 years old. But we'll see what happens if he's able to. I mean, people have cut their teeth in the UFC, right? John Jones, people have spent an entire career there. I'll be interested to see. I don't know how many fights he has on his deal left. If he has 1 or 2 more, I think maybe he'll might get another opponent and he can still impress. So Chase Hooper, and then my lock that hit was I had Brad Riddell over Drew Dober. That was a great fight, dude. I mean, Drew Dober took a ton of punches. He was taken down 5 times by Brad Riddell. He was taken down 5 times by Brad Riddell. Drew Dober also was stunned 3 or 4 other times. He just showed that he had an absolute cranium, and which we knew, right? Action figures have overly sized heads, and that's exactly what he is. His jaw, you could land a plane on it. I mean, it's absolutely insane. That being said, great for Brad Riddell to come through. Part of, City Kickboxing with Volkanovski and Adesanya, who, lost, had a gym member murdered fairly recently. The guy ran up on him. Izzy Adesanya talked about it, ran up on him, punched him in the back of the head. He fell and hit his head on the cement and died. So, it was good for those 2 guys to come out, and they came out motivated, and they good for them to get wins.
Yeah, doing it for the teammate. You always love that. And what an incredible fight that was between Brad Riddell and Drew Dober. I think it won Fight of the Night when it came time to dish out the bonuses for Dana White at the end. Yeah, just incredible. Incredible battle. Drew Dober, it's funny to watch him fight when he's against a guy like Brad Riddell who's piecing him up, because he's got that floppy haircut on top and his hair was just flying all over the place. You were right. You were right with that lock, though. We both went 1-1 on our prelim locks, and that was an incredible fight to watch. You were 100% right when you said that last week. Tune into this one. It was great. It was a brawl. So let's dive into the main card a little bit. We both had Jamal Hill winning over Paul Craig. Paul Craig somehow went out there, defied everything that we said he was going to do, defied all expectations across the board. Vegas odd makers, anybody out there watching that makes predictions, pretty much had Jamal Hill. And Paul Craig left Jamal Hill with his arm walking around like a noodle, snapped at the elbow pretty much. Said it wasn't broken. He was out partying later that night with Paul Craig, which was cool, because they had so much beef going into this fight. Like, if you watch Embedded, you saw the 2 of them at, like fighter signups for the week or check-ins, and they were both in each other's faces. They had to be pretty much pulled off of each other. But then at the end of the fight, what Jamal Hill said that Paul Craig said to him was, "I don't know what you heard about me, but I'm actually a really good guy, and I have a lot of respect for you." I love that. I love the sportsmanship between these guys, and the fact that they're able to go out after brawling with each other, not so much brawling with each other in this fight, but a lot of animosity going in and then getting a limb snapped and stolen. To be able to go out and have a couple drinks and just celebrate life and getting that payday, love to see it. What did you think of that fight?
Dude, I mean, listen, a couple things that couldn't have been predicted. Number 1, Jamal Hill's going to go out there and have his limb absolutely snapped in an inverted triangle, about two minutes into the fight. Also, what couldn't have been predicted is Jamal Hill somehow went out and became a member of the Gracie family between his last few fights, and potentially has the best jiu-jitsu in the light heavyweight division. He went out there, had no problem taking down Jamal Hill, landed 23 ground and pound strikes, had him in an inverted triangle in addition to 2 other submissions. I mean, and the only reason he let go of the inverted triangle is because he got probably grossed out and felt bad for Jamal Hill's arm flopping around out there. And he's like looking at the ref like, hey, are you going to do something about this guy whose arm is clearly not attached in the way it should be, whether that be through dislocation or break or whatever. It was definitely nasty to watch. It was good to see that apparently they were able to just pop it back in and he was able to go and have drinks. And, good for them. They squashed the beef. And that's what you like to see.
Yeah, I loved it all around. Not for my wallet so much, not for the channel, but for the sportsmanship, for the love of the sport, incredible to see. So then we had Bilal Muhammad versus Damian Maia, and that pretty much went exactly how he telegraphed it. We said that Bilal Muhammad was going to go out there, secure the dub. Damian Maia would probably get a couple takedowns, get him into some weird positions because he is such a legendary Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. But, Bilal, at the end of the day, you got the W for us. That felt really good for us, probably for him as well. Not so much for Damian Maia. Damian Maia heard from Dana White at the press conference after the fight that this might be it for him in the UFC. He's 43, 44 years old at this point. He's kind of on a downturn in his career, big downturn, definitely. He has a reputation for being one of those guys that'll always pick up the phone and go out there and fight. But I have a feeling that Damian Maia's time with the UFC has come to an end. But what do you think about the fight?
Listen, I thought that fight, I don't think he did that bad. Granted, I think Bilal Muhammad is an up-and-comer. I mean, I think he's going to be a guy rated in the top 10, and I think deservedly so. He's not on Leon Edwards' level, but I think he also does have some pretty solid power. And given, at a certain point in the fight, we saw Nate, almost finish Leon, and we'll talk about that later. But that was Bilal. Maybe Bilal, instead of pointing and laughing at Leon, runs in and finishes Leon after losing every other round prior to that. So, we can't go around and just say like, yeah, Leon beat Bilal because he won the first round. So that being said, I think Bilal was very good. And because, he's stuffed. We knew that Damian Maia was going to try and take him down, and I predicted that he was going to be able to stop the takedown. I didn't foresee that it was going to take the entire, it was going to take a minute each time to get Damian Maia off of him. And that just ate up almost the entire fight was spent Bilal Muhammad trying to defend a single leg and successfully defend 21 times. I think Damian Maia was 1 for 20 or 1 for 21 on takedowns. So 20 plus takedowns from Damian Maia. You stuff almost all of them. Like, that's a dominant performance by Bilal Muhammad. Definitely beat him on the feet. I think Bilal Muhammad definitely should get another opponent, within the top 10 and prove to us just how good he is. And Damian Maia, I agree with him. He, at the end of the fight, he called out Nate Diaz. Cool. Let's make that fight. Sounds good. Yeah. 2 guys who claim to be specializing in jiu-jitsu. We don't see Nate use his jiu-jitsu a lot. So cool. Let's do that. I like that fight.
You like Damian Maia versus Nate Diaz?
Yeah. It's someone that has a name, right? So that's what Nate looks for in opponents, people who have names that are going to do numbers. I think Damian Maia in his farewell fight against Nate Diaz, 2 Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioners. Naturally, Nate's going to beat him on the feet, but Nate, and these are 2 guys who are a little bit up there in age. Bilal Muhammad's 29 years old, entering his prime against Damian Maia, who's 43. That, Bilal's going to have all sorts of advantages with an age advantage like that. I was talking to you before we started recording that, hey, I know a lot about jiu-jitsu and I can call positions out, but when I actually do it, my body's not accustomed to it. My body's behind. And I imagine to a certain extent, that's how Damian Maia feels at 43 years old. Mentally, he's there and he knows, his jiu-jitsu knowledge hasn't diminished. His body has, and his body is not able to react as powerfully or as quickly as it had in the past. And that's his problem. But then you match him up with a 36, 37-year-old Nate Diaz. They're both names, jiu-jitsu guys. Like, yeah, I think that'd be a fun fight for sure.
Yeah, definitely agree. We just have to see, will the UFC give Damian Maia that farewell fight? Because it looks like his time is up. But speaking of Nate Diaz, that's the next fight in the main card that we had for us. Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards. What a matchup. Leon Edwards deservingly won that fight, but I'm sure if you watched that at home, you saw those last couple of punches in the last round by Nate Diaz and thought, wow, Nate Diaz is going to do it with a buzzer beater in Nate Diaz fashion. We said if it's a 5-round fight, he has a chance, and he waited until the 5th round to really start doing stuff. Probably not on purpose, but always an entertaining fight when Nate Diaz is out there. He had moves like he was slouching over, like he was exhausted all throughout the fight. Leon didn't really know what to do with that at some points, it looked like he was a little bit confused by the act. But that's Nate Diaz. You have to be ready for some showmanship. I mean, there's a reason why people at home love to watch him and why he's a household name. It's for the showmanship, it's for the entertainment, and then it's for some Stockton slaps and some knockouts. But, yeah, I mean, Nate Diaz, what is next for that guy? What do you think? And what do you think of the fight before we move on to that?
Well, listen, if you're Leon Edwards, you delivered a dominant performance each round, right? He clearly won each round except for the 5th. But that's not enough to challenge the champion. If
Right.
Kamaru Usman had fought this Nate Diaz, he would finish him.
Mm-hmm.
Colby Covington had fought this Nate Diaz, I believe he would finish him off of sheer volume. Yeah, Nate has a great gas tank, but I think Colby is stopping Nate's takedowns because Leon was able to stop them. If Leon was able to stop him, I think Colby will definitely be able to stop them as accomplished of a wrestler as he is. And then with the amount of volume in his face, I think Colby probably stops Nate. If you want to be at the top of the division, you needed to have been probably had stopped Nate Diaz. And the fact that late in the round, if Nate Diaz was almost any other fighter, you probably would have gotten TKO'd because Nate Diaz is going to laugh, give you the finger, and for whatever reason, he didn't, charge him. There was a very real chance that Leon Edwards lost that fight in the 5th round. So, yeah, he won. He was dominant for the 4 rounds prior to that. But is that enough to get a title shot? I don't think so. I think he's definitely going to have to, fight one more time and earn it, especially considering that the next title shot in here, Dana already talked about it. It's going to be Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman. He said it at the post-fight press conference that Leon, yeah, he looked good, but Colby's still the number 1 contender. So, hopefully Leon doesn't do what Colby did, and that's just sit and wait out. But at the end of the day, I think, Leon definitely needs to fight somebody in order to solidify himself as the next contender at 170.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't have a guy like Leon Edwards who claims to be the next guy up personally. I'm sure he thinks so still. And he wants to be that guy. But if you're going up against Nate Diaz, like you mentioned, older guy, should have gotten put away at a lot of points in that fight. You also need to be a guy that's entertaining, and you need to be a guy that's going to finish knockouts, finish a fight, not only to prove that, yeah, you can get it done against a guy like Kamaru and snatch that belt potentially, but you also need to prove that you're main event worthy for a pay-per-view and you're going to give people a show. And Leon Edwards, he was kind of boring, very technically sound, but it just wasn't entertaining at all. All the fans were there. They were, or anybody that was watching this fight was for Nate Diaz. It wasn't for Leon Edwards. So he really needs to do a great deal of A, marketing himself better as a fighter, and then B, marketing himself better as an entertainer. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, Leon definitely doesn't deserve the title shot after that. It really should have been a knockout in order to prove that was the case. And if he would have knocked out Nate Diaz too, he would have been elevated to a level of superstardom like very few UFC fighters see, like what we saw with Dustin Poirier when he knocked out Conor McGregor. Mm-hmm. It would have been the same reputation that Leon would have been carrying around at that point. People would have either loved him or hated him. He could have been a heel going forward, but he's just not that guy, and he needs to do a lot more to deserve a title shot. Plus, not even to mention, Kamaru Usman is looking to fight a lot of guys that he's fought before. He wants to, lap everybody, like he said. And I think that he does that by, checking the boxes of people that he's already fought. So, obviously, he already went back and fought Jorge. He's going to fight Colby. I have a feeling that he'll be fighting the winner of Wonderboy versus Burns after Colby. That makes a lot of sense for a lot of different reasons. We can touch on that for a second. Gilbert Burns gave Kamaru Usman some of his hardest hits in recent memory, and Kamaru was even scared to go to the ground with him. And then you have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who's absolutely loved by everybody. Nobody hates that guy. And that would be a marketable fight. And Stephen Thompson definitely gives Kamaru a problem on his feet.
For sure.
So, it's tough. It looks like it's going to be a while for Leon. Maybe Leon should fight the loser of Gilbert Burns, Stephen Thompson.
No, he should fight Michael Chiesa or
Okay.
maybe Vicente Luque.
Yeah.
All three. Vicente Luque coming off wins over Nico Price, Randy Brown, Tyron Woodley.
Yeah.
Or Tyron Woodley. So Luque going up and fighting Edwards, can see if he really deserves to be in the top echelon. Same thing with Michael Chiesa. His last wins are against Diego Sanchez. So I don't say what you want about that, but he beat RDA. He beat Neil Magny. Coming up a weight class here, but still, he can maybe fight Leon and decide if he deserves to be there or not. Listen, Leon's last 3 wins are RDA, Bilal Muhammad, and Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz, he almost lost. The Bilal Muhammad was 1 round. And then you have RDA, who is not even in the weight class anymore. So
I don't even consider that Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad like a real fight that happened. It ended on a fluke, and, so be it. I don't necessarily agree that it should go down as a win for Leon Edwards, but it does on paper. But it's tough. What does Leon do next? We don't even have the answers for that one. Typically, we have the answers for you with everybody else. We have a couple of good ideas.
He's got a lot of options.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys in here need to fight. The only people in this division with a scheduled fight right now are Stephen Thompson and Gilbert Burns. So That being said, those 2 guys are going to fight. You're going to have Kamaru fight Colby. Potentially, if that fight doesn't get signed soon, you may see the winner of Stephen Thompson versus Gilbert Burns fight Kamaru, because I genuinely believe Kamaru doesn't want to fight Colby again, whether that's because he doesn't like him as a person, or he doesn't respect him, or he wants to make him wait, or he's afraid of him. Whatever the reason is, I think he doesn't want to fight him. So if, Stephen Thompson knocks out Gilbert Burns or vice versa, or there's a tap, I think there's going to be a strong case for that guy to maybe fight Kamaru. That's granted, as long as Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington. As long as that fight doesn't get signed before the Stephen Thompson Gilbert Burns fight, I think you're going to see a strong push from Kamaru Usman and Ali Abdelaziz to fight either Thompson or Burns.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And yeah, all those points are definitely true about why Kamaru doesn't want to fight Colby. I think the number one thing is he's afraid of that guy, because when you look at Kamaru Usman's previous fights, Colby definitely gave him the hardest fight as he's been the champion, in my opinion at least. But I think a lot of people would agree with me on that one. So, yeah, there are a lot of moves that they have to make for the welterweight division, and only one scheduled, booked, locked-in fight. That's tough. That's a tough look, because you never know what's going to happen next in this division. But we'll see. I think Leon has a bright future as a gatekeeper. So
don't forget that you also have now Santiago Ponzinibbio in this division. And you have Khamzat Chimaev in this division.
Oh, that's right. And I believe that him and Leon were scheduled to fight back in January before Khamzat had to leave due to just getting beat up by the COVID. So
reschedule that, baby.
Yeah, that would be a good fight to make for sure. So the next one that we can dive into, and this is a fight that, nobody really saw the end result coming, was Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno is now the men's flyweight champion of the UFC. I don't think anybody could have seen that coming except for Brandon Moreno. Years ago, he gave us a speech. It might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen next week. It won't happen next month, but I will be the champion of the UFC at some point. Good for him. Good for Mexico. They got their first ever Mexican-born UFC champion. Incredible showing for Brandon Moreno, by the way. Like, you're picked by absolutely nobody to beat Davison Figueiredo, and he went out there and had one of the most dominant performances of the night. So what do you think about that matchup? I mean, I'm sure you're going to agree with me on those sentiments.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, before the fight, I was thinking, damn, this Davison Figueiredo guy, he had a rough time. He only made weight about 2 minutes before the, at the end of the time period where he had to weigh in. Last like 2 minutes, still barely made weight. He had to have the cone of shame or the what do you call it? The drapes of shame or the whatever.
Right.
He had to be naked on the scale in order to make weight, and still only barely did it. So he had a hard weight cut. Swore that the weight cut didn't matter. Went out there, had a terrible showing. With all due respect to Brandon Moreno looked phenomenal and thoroughly outclassed Davison Figueiredo. And unless Brandon Moreno is has made leaps and bounds of strides, in the last 6 months, we just saw maybe a great Brandon Moreno and a bad Davison Figueiredo, but definitely at least a very bad Davison Figueiredo. And then he tried to claim I had a bad weight cut. Let me cut again. It's well, you can't have it both ways. So Brandon Moreno, if we take a look at that division, there is a fight I believe that's already in the works that a lot of people had been talking about for that. It's going to be Brandon Moreno versus Askar Askarov. I believe Askarov has fought him to a draw in the past. So do another rematch fight, and that would definitely be a good one there. As far as Davison Figueiredo, there's a guy at number 5, Alex Perez. There's also a fight already scheduled between Brandon Royval and Alexandria Pantoja. Maybe the winner of that fights Davison Figueiredo. I don't know, but I think Davison Figueiredo needs 1, probably 2, depending on if any other stars emerge in that division, in order to get back and challenge for the title if it's still held by Brandon Moreno.
Yeah, that's typically how it goes, right? We see this, Mike Chandler, Charles Oliveira, prime example. Mike Chandler just fought for the belt, gave Charles Oliveira a good fight, and he still has to win 2 more to get back into that position, barring if there's no one that emerges as the next true contender. So definitely the same case for Davison Figueiredo, and you can't get absolutely dominated and have Brandon Moreno just climbing all over your back like a spider monkey and feel like you deserve the shot again immediately. I'm thinking that this fight definitely will be made at some point in the future again. Probably won't be a year from now. It'll probably be somewhere in the distant future if Davison Figueiredo isn't on some crazy downturn in his career, but who knows? This is another one, personally, I would like to see a guy like Kaikara France. I'm a big fan of his, get a couple of more wins, work his way up there. I think he's got it in him. But, I definitely think that Askar Askarov is definitely the fight to make for the belt the next time around, whenever that happens. One thing that really stuck out to me from Brandon Moreno after the post-fight conferences was that he touched on how big his mindset played into this fight, and that he was watching Rose back at UFC 262 saying, I'm the best, and he really embodied that that change in mindset, and he probably just told himself that so many times, looked back at his speech from years ago and was so determined. And then you have Davison, who has his struggles again. He always has problems cutting weight. Brandon Moreno, it's almost easy for him. And he was so relaxed. You mentioned this before we started filming. Figueiredo was telling him straight up, he stopped speaking Spanish for a second and said, I'm going to knock you out. And then went right back to speaking Spanish. Face-offs, he pushed Brandon Moreno pretty far. And Brandon Moreno was just whatever, this isn't the fight, So when you have a guy that's that confident and that relaxed, it's tough. It's really tough to pull out a win against him. It's almost like he doesn't care, but he really does. But he's not letting the shit get to him. He's not caring about all the trash talk and the nonsense before the fight.
Especially when the other guy is maybe letting it get to them, or maybe cares a little bit too much. Not to say there's too much you could care, but you know what I mean. Certainly, there's a level of, there's a level of intensity that maybe you shouldn't cross when it's I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill you. Sometimes that can work against you in the fact that you lose sight of just being conscientious and flowing. You put maybe too much on it, and you overthink every decision, and maybe that's why Davison looked so kind of in second or third gear, just because maybe he's thinking too hard about everything because he has so much invested that he needs to win this against a guy who's I'm going to go out there. I think I'm going to win. And, it is what it is. And I'm just going to enjoy this. And he was confident, but composed. And that's what you really want to be. And that's what Brandon Moreno embodied, was confident and composed.
Yeah, all-time sportsman move by Davison Figueiredo to lift Brandon Moreno up.
Well, it looked too much. It was like too much. He was like cheering with him, and he acted, he performed terribly, turned into him, gave up his back, and no one else had really had Davison's back before. He was out his back almost immediately in the third round. And then now is celebrating and cheering Brandon Moreno, and then turns around and says, "Oh, I had a bad weight cut," and immediately demands a rematch after celebrating the guy beating him before and saying you didn't have a weight. Like, it just, none of his decisions line up. It doesn't follow a singular thought process. I'm just very confused by it all.
Yeah, I personally I like that move because if you're looking to, win a crowd over in a situation like that, especially when you're like the away guy, this
He
is
was like celebrating with Brandon Moreno.
Yeah. When you get beat that badly, it's like, wow, this guy outclassed me so bad that he deserves the belt. It was a bit far. It was definitely excessive, very excessive. It's one thing to congratulate someone and be like, okay, you got the better of me tonight. But, lifting him up, celebrating with him, and then you're right, walking it back afterwards and saying like, oh, well, he only beat me because of excuse A, B, and C. That does make it seem like there's a little bit of a disconnect there. But, you mentioned how aggressive and how, rigid Davison Figueiredo looked, overthinking things potentially, letting things get to him. Well, you want to talk about another fighter who clearly let a lot of things get to him. We got Marvin Vettori going out there and not getting it done the way that I had hoped, the way that I had this gut feeling that he was going to. Izzy Adesanya proved why he's the champ. He proved why he has so many fans out there and, why he's going to continue to hold that belt for quite some time, I think. I thought maybe that was the night where he lost it and where my guy Vettori, the Italian Dream, was picking it up at the end. But, it happens sometimes. I do think Vettori put up a really good fight against Adesanya. When you look at the size difference, when you look at Adesanya's skill level on his feet, but then there were even moments where Vettori went out there and was doing what he was saying he was going to, trying to go for takedowns, and Izzy had an answer for a lot of them. There were times when Marvin had him on his back, and it was like, okay, could he do it here? Izzy found a way. So what do you think of that one?
I mean, I hate to say I told you so, but, he did exactly what I thought he was going to do. He was going to use his 6-inch reach advantage that he has on almost everybody in the division. He keeps him at range with long leg kicks and body kicks. And, within the first round, Marvin Vettori's already had a chewed up lead leg. What he proved is that he's exceptionally tough.
Yeah.
To be able to walk through those leg kicks as if they simply didn't fucking happen. It is absolutely a testament to his mental strength and his determination. That being said, at that distance, there's no way he was going to be able to, step in and hit Adesanya before Adesanya either hold his back away because his torso is so long, you can get out of range just by leaning back, and then his feet follow. Marvin Vettori didn't do a good enough job of blasting in there, waiting for him to lean his body back, exposing his hips, and then try to take him down. But even when he did, sometimes do that or try to go in and shoot a takedown, Izzy would do a great job of getting backed up to the fence, not letting him get his hands locked. If he did get his hands locked, he'd reach down and try and unhook the hands and spread them out. And, a little bit similar to the Bilal Muhammad fight where, you get backed up to the cage, and more often than not, he was able to prevent the takedown there. It took a little bit of time, but he was able to prevent the takedown there. Really no offense or damage was inflicted by Marvin Vettori on really any of those takedowns or those takedown attempts. Even the 1 or 2 or 3 that he got, just like you said, Keith, you're like, oh, maybe here's a chance. He even got flattened out on his back a couple times, but he was still able to work through it. He reversed one of them to end around in dominant position. He kept getting up. He showed us that he is as good on the feet as he ever was, and he's only improving that other area of his game. There was a couple points where he almost got Marvin Vettori in like an armbar or set him up in an inverted triangle. He was throwing his legs up. He was showing definite, jiu-jitsu practitioner level experience on the ground. So I think I'm listen, it was a good fight by Marvin Vettori. That doesn't mean it was a close fight. I think it was very clearly Izzy Adesanya was the better guy in there. They fight 10 times. I think Izzy probably wins 6, 7, maybe 8 of them. That being said, Izzy's proven why he's the champion. He's the best one in the division. It's not really that close. And the only person it really was ever close with, and it really wasn't even then, is Robert Whittaker. But as the previous champion, he deserves a rematch. So he's going to get the rematch. They talked about it already in the post-fight press conference. They both called each other out. Like, Robert Whittaker didn't much just call out, just respond and say, yeah, I'll fight you. Yeah, I've been waiting on that. I had to fight 3 other guys to get my rematch, and I should have gotten immediately because who cares what I did as the champion? Izzy's here. Similar to with Stipe. Stipe, like, he doesn't get an immediate rematch. He's got to wait, whatever. Now, maybe he wants to wait because of age. But that being said, as soon as Francis was champ, everything else about Stipe got thrown out, which I don't like. But that being said, the Izzy versus Whittaker fight is going to be great. They're going to try and do it in October, I think, is a time frame that was being discussed. Dana doesn't seem to think that they can get things worked out with the nation of New Zealand or Australia by that time to be able to actually do a pay-per-view there. So who knows what the odds of it actually being out there as Izzy and Robert want are going to be. But I don't know, maybe they do Fight Island or something. But, hey, so it's, maybe in the time zone. Maybe they change up the time so it's a little bit better. I don't know, something. But, yeah, I think that's Izzy's next fight. And Marvin Vettori, he did show that he put up a good – anyone in the middleweight division who can not get finished by Izzy Adesanya clearly belongs in the top of the division, right?
Yes.
So – you have him. You have Paulo Costa, who's fighting Jared Cannonier.
No, I thought that got moved. Or someone jumped in on that one. I could be wrong.
Jared Cannonier is fighting.
Is it Gastelum?
Who'd you say?
Is it Gastelum?
Yes, it's Gastelum. Cannonier is fighting Gastelum. So Costa's probably going to get shelled for a while. So maybe Vettori fights. He's probably going to have to fight someone below him. Maybe Jack Hermanson. You have Derek Brunson, Darren Till coming up in August, I think, unless that got rescheduled.
Yeah. I think that Vettori already has a win over Hermanson, so maybe you could run that back, but I don't know.
Everyone's booked. You have Kelvin Gastelum, who's booked. Sean Strickland and Uriah Hall are fighting.
Good one.
Really, outside of that, so he already beat Kevin Holland. Everyone in front of Kevin Holland has a fight except for Jack Hermanson and Marvin Vettori and Paulo Costa.
That might be the one to do. I will say this about Vettori. He did say after the Kevin Holland fight that he wanted to wait until October to fight again. So I could see Vettori potentially taking a good chunk of time off. Probably a little under a year, maybe even a year. But he wants a little bit of time off. Going into fight camps over and over again does take a big toll on your body, and he is still a young guy. So who knows? Maybe he's looking to brush off a little bit of that wear and tear from 2 almost back-to-back fights.
Yeah, so maybe if he fights in November, December.
Yeah.
He can fight the winner of Darren Till, Derek Brunson.
I would like that. Darren Till is a guy that I like. He's very funny. He's got some great stories. If you ever hear him on another podcast, he's hilarious. And I think that the shit talk between him and Vettori pre-fight would be hilarious. It would be very much, akin to what we saw this week leading up to this fight, where it's sometimes Vettori doesn't even have an answer for what Darren Till is going to be saying to him. I think that would be an entertaining fight and stylistically good matchup. So, yeah, that could be the one to make going forward.
Or maybe he fights Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa takes some time off.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows if Paulo Costa is ever going to come back to the UFC? I mean, that guy, I know it's more likely than not that he does, but that guy is just making a lot of inflammatory comments towards the people that make the matchups right now.
And Sanchez, I think, took over Paulo Costa's Twitter.
What, is that for real?
No, I'm not. No, not for real. But it might be. It might be. Paulo Costa might have had his Twitter taken over by Diego Sanchez.
Yeah, or Josh Faber, even worse.
He's talking crazy like that.
Yeah. It looks like he got hit too many times in the head, or he's drinking too much vino. Who knows what's going on with Paulo? But it's like any other job. your boss is giving you the extra hours, giving you a little bit of a bump in pay. You never want to come out and be like, to the public especially, what you're doing for me is not enough.
When you've had a really poor last outing.
Yeah, you never want to be that guy. And Paulo Costa isn't proving himself as a fighter at the moment. And he's certainly not proving himself as a worthy employee, because at the end of the day, these people are employees of the UFC.
For sure.
I'm sure they don't view themselves as that. They view themselves more as assets, but it's like any other sporting league where you sign a contract to the team. If the team doesn't like your performance, they can just get rid of you. And that's what it looks like is happening to Paulo. I think, I think you're right. Maybe Darren Till, Derek Brunson, the winner of that. You throw Vettori out there against them. Paulo Costa versus Vettori, if that's what they want to do, like, okay, two guys that just lost to Izzy, we'll put them out there against each other. Don't hate that idea either, all depending on Paulo Costa's conduct going forward. But I do want to be clear about something I did say last week with our buddy Nick on here. I didn't think that Vettori was going to win. It was just the feeling. That was it. On paper, obviously, and when you look at, everything, like on video, on paper, real life shit, Izzy Adesanya is winning that fight 9 times out of 10. I do hope, though, that Vettori does somehow make his way back there. It doesn't even need to be Izzy holding the belt, because I'm still a Vettori fan at the end of the day. And if he ever gets another title shot, I'll be riding for the Italian dream. That's just me. It's like if Mike Chandler ever gets that title shot again, I do think he's definitely way more deserving of it. But, when you have someone you're a fan of, maybe that skews it a little bit. And you're like, hey, you know what? I think that this can get done. But it is what it is. I'll take that L. I'll take that.
When he's a big fan of someone, we should probably pick against them. And it's not really good for them. Marvin Vettori, Michael Chandler, these guys are casualties of Keith Eppinger fanhood.
Eppinger, not to correct you, but we do have to, there's the NG.
Either way, you're a curse, so.
Yeah, I'll take that. We got the Chael curse, now we got the Keith curse. But yeah, you're right. Big Stipe fan. That didn't really work out too well for him last time around, but I am a big Rose fan. That worked out well. I'm trying to think who else this could apply to right now.
Cowboy?
I'm not as big of a Cowboy fan as you are. Cowboy, yeah, he's been there my whole life watching the UFC, but kind of boring, kind of old at this point. So at this point, I'm like almost urging Cowboy, get that last fight and retire, get a W. Hey, speaking of Cowboy, you mentioned this to me before. I think it was yesterday. You were saying, what about Nate Diaz versus Cowboy?
Yeah, that'd be a sick fight too.
Yeah, definitely. You said losing.
Damian Maia wouldn't get his wish, but I don't know if Damian Maia will even get his wish anyway. It seemed like Dana White's pretty out on seeing him fight. So I know that it was a phenomenal recommendation by myself earlier that Damian Maia do fight Nate Diaz, and I think there's a lot of reasons that fight would make sense and be an interesting sell and be worth watching. But if we can only have Nate Diaz fight one more fight, I'm not saying that we are, but I think Nate Diaz would be a lot more interesting in a Cowboy Cerrone brawl than he would in a jiu-jitsu match with Damian Maia.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. So, that pretty much wraps up our picks for the week, our roundup show. Now, we do have a little bit of news that we got to touch on. We had Clarissa Shields making her MMA debut in the PFL, getting a W her first time out by KO. Incredible. Very, very impressive performance out of her. On her back for a lot of the second round, comes back in round 3 and does it with punches. I was a big fan.
Yeah, she showed that she has speed that maybe we've never ever seen in female UFC, or not UFC, female MMA. I mean, her hand speed, her boxing, her technicality, it's all great, and it's probably even a little bit improved from boxing because now she only has the 4 ounce gloves. So you're going to have a speed advantage there when you lose 6 ounces, half a pound on each hand. So that being said, her hand speed was fast. Her takedown defense was okay. She did stuff a couple takedowns, but what was really interesting about the fight is she showed great hand speed at the beginning of the first. She got immediately taken down, and she was on her back for about half to maybe 3/5 of the entire round. So she not only should have been gassed going into the second and, got completely dominated. She comes out, she looks fresh, she stuffs the first takedown, and then gets on bottom again. But this time, I think she gets out. Then she gets taken down again. I think she maybe reverses and then starts, beating and then ends up falling back into a less dominant position. But she's showing improvement in ground game in the second round and no lack of energy loss. Come into the third round, still looks fresh, and then not only does she stuffs a takedown, then she gets taken down subsequently by it because in the scramble she ended up on top. So I'm a little nervous now. I'm like, you should just disengage and make her fight you on the feet because you're clearly more dominant there. But no, she proves me wrong. She gets on top, maintains on top, keeps low hips, so doesn't allow her opponent from switching over to her, and then absolutely beat the crap out of her on the ground. Her ground and pound showed that it was very, very, very advanced, very powerful, just like her stand-up. But the thing, my biggest takeaway is we saw her every round get better against all odds after, facing a lot of adversity in the round prior. She showed a champion's mentality, and I think if she can continue to work on her takedown defense and continue to improve her ground game, listen, for 6 months, she did absurdly well. She shouldn't have won that fight. Like, if you look at someone, hey, yeah, they're world class in this one area, but now it's MMA, and they have 6 months to be just adequate in every other area. You really shouldn't win that fight when you start off at the professional level. She didn't have any amateur fights. She only had sparring is really her only thing, and went into a professional league in a tournament for $1 million and has her first win. I don't know if she's going to go on and win the rest of the tournament. It depends on how fast she can continue to improve and what her takeaways are from that first fight in the ring. But I don't know if I want to bet against her for sure. If she can continue, like, she literally got better the entire, like, we watched her level up throughout the fight. Who knows what she's going to learn and take from that and how much better she's going to be at takedown defense going on to the next round of the tournament. I don't know who she's fighting next, but listen, I'm not going to bet against her. I'm going to root for her.
Absolutely. She made me a fan with that performance. And I love her nickname, too. The greatest woman of all time.
Whoa.
Hilarious. I love it. Not even the greatest woman fighter, just the greatest woman of all time. And that's going to sound great when she eventually gets signed to the UFC. And, they're calling that out because the PFL is putting out some great competition right now, especially great women fighters, too. You got Kayla Harrison over there, and you got now Clarissa Shields, who's really making a name for herself. She already had a division. What did you say?
In the women's lightweight 155 division, showing that, hey, there are talented women outside the UFC that maybe there should be a women's lightweight division.
Yeah, there definitely will be at some point in the future. No doubt about it, because the weights that they require for the UFC right now are still a bit light, and I feel like there's a bit of a gap there where it's like, okay, either they're very small and they can fight like that, or they're a little bit bigger and a little bit more higher in the 100s in weights. So, but yeah, there's definitely a demand for it now at this point, and the PFL is doing a great job. Love the playoff style bracket that they have going. Really just an entertaining new take on MMA. So
my only criticism for the PFL is that they have to fight like 4 times a year, and it's an aggressive, it's a grueling schedule. I think they should make the season a 2-year-long season, and they have 3 fights in the first year, and that whole first year, say we'll start next year, 2022 is the regular season, and then 2023 is the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you can fight, 2, 3, 4 times, and each win is worth some points, and a loss is worth negative points, and that's how you figure out, like, oh, well, this guy, he fought twice, but he got 2 first-round KOs. This guy fought 4 times, but he fought the 2 decisions and had 2 losses, 1 by KO, 1 by decision, or something like that. And you have a point system that it would rate that and be like, well, the guy who's fought twice and has 2 KOs, he's going to go to the playoffs because of his points. So maybe that's a reason why he wouldn't have as many fights. I don't know, but I don't know. There's some kinks to work out, but I think it's a lot more interesting if they make it a 2-year season as opposed to one, because with fighting, like there's so many unknowns, and if it's 2-year season, a guy might be able to get injured and still be able to have a fight or two.
Yeah,
So
I agree. Or they could just go back to the old style of MMA tournaments and have everyone fight in one night. And whatever damage you took in your first fight, well, that's going to live with you for fights 2, 3, and 4.
mm-hmm.
I like that idea too.
Rounds, so it's just a fight.
Yeah, I like that idea too. But yeah, I do like what the PFL is doing. And just to give you a little bit of a counter argument, I think that doing 4 fights a year when you're pretty much a brand new, fight promotion that's really making a name for yourself right now, not brand new, but making a name for yourself in the current moment, 4 fights a year is a really good way to build up some of your stars and get them constantly out there in the public eye. That's the only pushback I'll give you there. I do agree, injury management, load management, things like that, you have to take time off. It's only right. But when it comes to, okay, everyone now loves Clarissa Shields, well, we're not going to see her for another 10 months from now. Actually, you might see her 4 times in a year, and it really gives you a chance to build up that fan base as the PFL, as that fighter,
To push back at you, if you force them to fight 4 times a year, it's not even 4 times a year. It's like 4 times in like half the year or 3/4 of the year.
Right.
So there's an off season. So when you force that on the fighters, you're getting a worse product every time, or it's at least not good for their longevity if they have to fight 4.
Yeah.
In my setup, they are more than welcome to fight 4. And that would help them secure, maybe a name outside sponsorships. It would help them, it definitely help them financially. And, it could help them with more points and a better chance to make the playoffs. So at least in my way, it leaves it up to fighter discretion to make a name for themselves. You still put on the same amount of events. You may have to hire more people, but in this way, it's a little bit more attractive because you can choose how much and you have a little bit more power over, I want to make the playoffs. Hey, imagine this way, someone who fought 5 times in 2022, he was able to get like 2 knockouts, a sub, decision, and, he lost twice, but he still makes the playoffs because, hey, you showed he could fight 5 times and he had these thrilling victories or whatever. Like, I think that's a lot more fair than like you have 2 fight regular season, 6-7 weeks apart, and then you have your postseason, like all within 8 months, you're having 4 fight. Like it's a quick turnaround.
No, you're 100% right. I just think that's their only reason for doing that. Not their only reason, but a big reason for it. Give something a little bit different to the fans at home. But is there anything else you want to touch on? Maybe that McGregor-Poirier promo? What are your thoughts on that? Give us your 2 cents there.
Yeah, I'm excited for the fight. I guess that was a promo for just that fight. I want them to, promo the whole card. Like, I really want to start seeing some Stephen Wonderboy Thompson stuff.
Absolutely.
Really excited for that Stephen Thompson Gilbert Burns fight. I think it's going to be a banger. It's classic grappler versus striker, and we saw with Izzy Adesanya that the longer guy can, with the right technique and the right stuff, can definitely keep a lesser striker at bay. So we'll see if that repeats itself, or are we going to see the usual where the grappler is able to come through and take the guy down and beat him there. So interesting fight there. I think there's a couple other fighters on the, like, I think name's escaping me. Defensive end turned MMA turned UFC fighter.
Oh, Greg Hardy.
Greg Hardy is fighting on that card as well. I think Sugar Sean O'Malley is on that card too.
Yeah, it's going to be one to watch for sure.
It's going to be very good. It's going to be, probably just as good as the card we saw this past weekend. I think it's going to be stacked with fights to the 9s.
Better. It's going to be even better, dude. It's going to be.
Where's it happening? Is it in Houston?
Las Vegas. T-Mobile Arena. Yep.
Ooh.
T-Mobile Arena, July. I want to say
with full capacity fans.
I think so.
I wonder why they didn't get that for the Raiders Stadium.
Good question. Does the Raiders Stadium have a roof?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, who knows then? I don't know. Maybe they're not at full capacity, but as things change, as things go forward, things might change, and they might say, wow, there's such a high demand for tickets. They've broken all their records. Like, each fight sells out more and more. more and more fans. Like this week was more than 262, I believe they said. And, they just keep breaking records. So who knows? Maybe by the time that we get to July, they're going to say, wow, the demand for this is so crazy.
I think it'd be too much of a logistical challenge to move the spot.
You never know. They've changed fights like to entire different countries on a moment's notice. So
yeah, but with fans. And the thing is if you're going to change it to a different spot, you could still sell tickets in the one spot and just tell them, oh, well, we'll come back here and you'll get tickets to that. People buying the McGregor fight, like they're not going to be like, oh, I'll just accept other tickets.
Yeah,
they're going to want to go to the fight, but they're going to want to be at the Coliseum, or no, it's not the Coliseum anymore, but they're going to want to be at the stadium. And how are you going to decide who gets to sit where? So I think that might be a logistical challenge, but my prediction, if this is at the T-Mobile Arena and they are able to sell out, one of the next few fights that they put on, I guarantee you is going to be in that Raiders Stadium.
Yeah, you're right about that. And how exciting is that? What a sight to see that would be.
I wonder if they're going to allow them to do that during football season.
Good question. Games are Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays. If they could time it up well, where it's like, maybe a Thursday game or a Monday game, put on the event Saturday, it gives it enough time to get everything in check in time for a game. So I think it's definitely doable.
I want to maybe not this year, because I don't think I think tickets to Raider games are going to be too expensive. So maybe next season or the season after, I would love to go on a weekend where you have a UFC fight at T-Mobile Arena, and then you have a Raider game on Sunday. That would be an insane weekend in Vegas for me.
What would make it like a dream weekend for me is if it happened to be a day that maybe the Giants and the Raiders, if they book that matchup.
Oh yeah.
Team is playing. I'll go out to Vegas, and we'll have ourselves a little bit of a weekend. Yeah, that would be something else. But we can't take.
Raiders. We'll get into all the tailgates. It would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I know who we see at a Raiders tailgate. There's one guy in particular. He's been on this show before.
Jimmy. Oh, that's what I said.
Oh, okay. I
didn't even hear it. Raiders, and then we'll get into every Raiders tailgate.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to bring Jimmy Raiders. That guy, recurring guest. He'll be back here soon. And who knows? He might be fighting himself pretty soon. Looks like he has. Yeah, he's always on Twitter. If you haven't followed him yet, he's always on Twitter looking to call people out for boxing. I don't know if that's after he's chugged a couple Miller Lights or whatever it is he's drinking now, but who knows? Wouldn't that be something?
Let's do a boxing fight and an MMA fight, I think, or maybe just a jiu-jitsu roll. But,
yeah, I think he should probably stick to boxing after his last jiu-jitsu-esque performance. But
I think that's who he wants to take on. I think he's been practicing. And he thinks he's a lot better now. We'll be able to take that guy.
Well, that would be fun to see. Who knows? Maybe we could live stream that, make that a pick and fights event. Yeah, but not too much. I'm not hating on Jimmy Raiders. That's our boy. It's tough to see a guy get his neck taken like that.
Very quick.
But yeah, we have a lot of fun stuff coming up. We've got a great event this weekend. Not one of my favorites, but a guy that I always like to watch, the Korean Zombie, is going to be fighting.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, we're excited to talk to you about all this stuff. If you made it this far, comment down below whether we won you some money this weekend, whether we lost you, or, if you just hate us, you love us, let us know in the comments down below. We love it all. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned because we do have a lot of the fun stuff that we were talking about before. We'll be back to talk to you about it later. Tom, you have a great night. Thanks for another great episode, man.
Mm-hmm.